Hello, hi, welcome to Simonheals, and my name is Simon. And if you've joined me before, you will be delighted to know that I'm joined today by Clea. And Clea and I met a couple of weeks ago, and she introduced to us her relationship that she's been developing with what she calls the 25th or the 25th dimension. And this is something that she has been experiencing through a series of hypnosis sessions over the last 3 or 4 months, I think it is. And Clea has been sharing the information that's been coming through to her on her channel, which is Clea's World, which I really recommend that you check out. I will leave links for her channel down in the description below. So today we're going to follow up on that and catch up on where this information is at, and yeah, just really how we use this information. I think for me now, Clea, this is what I'd like to discuss today. But for anyone that hasn't met you before, maybe you'd like to just kind of briefly introduce yourself.
Sure. So yes, I have been putting out this information for the last 4 months or so. I think I started in November. I actually initially connected with the 25th dimension last August. It just took me several months to wrap my mind around what had happened, because it is such an unusual experience. And then now, obviously, I've gotten used to, and it's become much more common for me. Now, the hypnosis session was like a trigger, because I now connect directly without having to be under hypnosis. In fact, if we ask a question, I'll normally get the answer right away without even thinking about it. Just they hear a question and they'll answer it sometimes. And so, yeah, I am a normal person. I have been, I'm a real estate investor. I have my own business. I live in the United States. But I've always been very psychic when I was little. And at some point in my life as a teenager, I decided to shut down all my gifts because they were just uncomfortable. I wanted to be here. I wanted to be fully in the material world. So I even became an atheist. I went 180 degrees, which is quite funny, the stuff that we can convince ourselves of, to have all these psychic gifts that clearly show that reality is not what we think it is. And then to pretend that you don't even believe in God. It's really fun. The 25th actually has been laughing at me about this. And I'm okay with that. I don't mind. It's true. And then a few years ago, I went through a dark night of the soul. And out of that, basically, I decided to open up my gifts again. And they've been coming back with a vengeance. I was not able to connect to the 25th dimension before, or at least not in such an obvious manner as I do now. And all of a sudden now I can do that. And as you know, because you watched my video from earlier this week or last week, I should say, I have now connected with Source as well through a plant medicine experience. So I've had a lot of fun with this, I have to tell you. And to answer your question, which is an excellent question, what do we do with this information? We're getting all these explanations about how reality actually is, which is very different from what we've been told it is here, or what we told ourselves, because it's all us at the end of the day. There is really no they, no other. We're all one. And that's a very good question. Now, first of all, if we are to take at face value everything we've been told by the 25th dimension, we are going to move on very soon from this planet. So technically, you don't even really need to apply anything to our lives right now. You can just hang in there for a few more months and then we're done with this. But it is good to know that how can this information change the quality of our time here, whether it is a few months or decades. And the way that I think about it, or what it has done for me, is that it has given me a whole new perspective of where people come from and what we're trying to do. And I'll give you just one quick example. So I connected to Source last week, and I was told that the way that we create matter, what we consider matter, which would be this planet, we think it's solid, it's concrete, it's matter. The way we create this is by lowering the vibration of the energy, which means that we want to live with low vibrational energy. But if you listen to a lot of New Age spirituality, they condemn this low vibration. However, it's always the same thing. We talked about this the last time, this judging, this isolating anything that is not love and light and judging it as being bad. This is what causes pain, what causes suffering. But so we've done the same thing in terms of low vibrational energy. Low vibrational energy, all it is slowed down energy. It's frozen energy, if you want to think of it that way. There's nothing negative about it. We would not be able to create everything that surrounds us and that we consider to be real if we did not have low vibrational energy. But in order, the great misunderstanding has come from that. And this is what has caused the pain and the darkness we are living with. The misunderstanding has been, and actually Source told me this, that the misunderstanding has been that because we create with low vibrational energy, everything had to be as low vibrational as possible. And that's when we started losing the balance, the polarity between light and dark. And so basically when people suffer, the quickest way, I was shaking my head when I heard this, when I got this, the quickest way to materialize low vibrational energy and therefore to keep this planet going so that it stays together is pain. So the dark, especially the dark, has decided that this is the best way to keep this reality solid from crumbling, is to inflict pain. But we all do it. We all participate because we're all interested in keeping this reality together, keeping it this solid. And what Source told me is that this is a misunderstanding because reality does not have to be this solid for us to consider as solid, meaning that we don't have to use such low vibration to keep this going. We can absolutely have lighter vibrations.
Yeah, can I just interject there? So as you know, something that I focus on is healing and really guiding people to heal. And so from my perspective as an energy healer, the disease in a way is energy that becomes embodied, it becomes trapped in the body. And we often talk about that being lower vibration energy because, and I relate that to the emotional scale. So when we experience those lower frequency emotions, such as shame, guilt, regret, etc., we tend to find it challenging to process those emotions, and so they become embodied. And so relating that to what you're saying, it's almost like we're holding on to time within our bodies to maintain that illusion of reality. Because if we didn't do that and we just allowed all these to move through us, then we'd just be constantly flowing in this kind of timeless state, and there'd be no density to us as physical beings as well. So that really makes sense, that our suffering and our disease is our way of kind of creating matter. And something I want to ask you about there, because you and I have kind of I've already brought this up together privately, is where sound kind of plays with this. So could you just speak about that a little, how you understand that?
And before we move to sound, let me just comment on what you just said, which is right on. What they have told me about disease is that it's blobs of energy that we let attach to ourselves. And the reason we do this is because we want to feel like we're in the game. because this is a game that's not real. Diseases basically increase that ability that we have to believe it is real. Because look, my arm, something is wrong with my arm, and therefore this must be real. Whereas we could take care of the arm in a split second. So yes, absolutely what you're saying. So sound, yes, extremely exciting. I had no idea what to expect, but basically when I connected to source, it was music, basically. In fact, I asked it, I said, what would you like me to call you now? Because clearly it's not a man with a white beard, you know, what we've been taught to think of as God. And source came back and said, music? Just because he doesn't really care what we call it. So he goes, just call it whatever you think it's music, let's call it music. And so yes, it all basically, this is the knowledge that I've received, is that the entire multiverse source is frequency. Frequency is music, is what it is. It's music. And it looked, just in case your viewers might be curious about this, it looked like fractals that kept on moving, like if you had a computer screensaver, you know, with all those things that keep creating themselves. That's exactly what it looked like. And basically, it's this music that creates, and it creates nonstop. In fact, we're not even aware of all that music creates, because music, God, has created us in the 25th dimension, but we have created this entire multiverse. But source continues creating in dimensions we're not even aware of. The 25th told me, we don't even know what else God creates. We're not privy to it, because that's what he does. He creates, and he doesn't have to tell us what he's creating.
So the 25th is one single fractal of source.
That's a good way of
and then yeah, and then all the essence of the 25th, which is the word that you use rather than soul. Let's say you talk about us as being essence. Each essence is also then a fractal of that, and then these fractals, so those fractals keep replicating down into these other realities. Yeah,
well, what happens, yes, absolutely. The only distinction I would make there is that essences are indivisible, meaning that that's why they don't use the word souls, because soul was just an introductory concept to essence that was acceptable to be used by humans. Meaning even religion, they said, would allow this to fly, because, you know, religion has been trying to separate us from source forever. And no offense to anybody, I know great people who are religious, but the bottom line is that's what religion was created for, is to separate us from our own connection to source. That's why we have to use intermediaries, technically, you know, through them to get any kind of truth. And so that's why they don't use we have used the word soul, but they don't use the word soul, because soul still assumes that you are separate souls. There is no separation. When the 25th refers to itself, they say they are essence, in the sense they're like air. You do not think of air as being, you can cut in pieces. In fact, air is not even a collective. The 25th is not a collective. It's just essence, is indivisible. But you're absolutely right. From the 25th, we then created everything, because we are made of source. And therefore, just like source, we can create. We don't have the same creative power as source, but we have created an entire multiverse. So we clearly quite good.
So I guess then, kind of back to my original question, which is, what do we do with this information, and how does it affect us in our kind of day-to-day lives? You know, the message there is that we are all source, that if we understand ourselves to be that, and see each other as that, I mean, that is got to be so healing, both at an individual level and for us as a collective of humanity. If we could all see each other as a little piece of source.
Not only, but the 25th has always said from the beginning They were just teams. There's a team of the light and a team of the dark, but we are friends. They said it's just like you're getting together with your friends and deciding to split yourselves into two teams. Doesn't mean you don't like them anymore. You're just playing. And everybody's playing the game exactly as it's supposed to be played. And now with the information that I got from Source, where they said this is a misunderstanding because the dark basically, or this way of lowering the energy, is actually something we wanted to do. But the misunderstanding was, it wasn't an evil plan. It was simply a misunderstanding where we thought the lower, the better. Okay. So when you start putting things in perspective like this, you realize there is really no evil intent. Now, does that mean we do not witness it or absorb it as, or consider it as evil on this planet? Yes, it does show up in very evil forms. Okay, this is undeniable. But when you think of us, including the people on the side of the dark, doing evil deeds as the essence that they are, you realize that at their multidimensional self really has fallen into a misunderstanding. And so you kind of start balancing things out for yourself. Also because another recurring message from the 25th, and actually from Source as well, is that we are everything. We're not just love and light. But because we like to believe on the team of the light that we are only light, we are really cornering our friends from the other team into only being dark. And that's why we've seen such evil deeds come across. If we had learned to accept that we're all capable of everything, we would have not seen this pan out the way it has. And that is our future. We are going to all start realizing that we are not just love and light, we are everything. And being everything is key. And I will tell you something. Go ahead, please. And then I want to tell you something I didn't put out in a video yet. So you'll be the first one to hear it. Yes, go ahead.
Sometimes it's a bit weird speaking on Zoom because you can't have that kind of natural just interjecting. But what you're saying is something that I've understood instinctively about what's going on in the world for many years. That what we're seeing out there really is a reflection of how we are individually, which is that we do not, for the greater part anyway, we do not accept and integrate those aspects of ourselves that we dislike. And we're very much encouraged to do that. Like, we've always got to be happy. We've always got to be positive. We've always got to be upbeat, and we can never cry. We can never be angry. So we've really learned to present this version of ourselves, which is, this kind of like happy, acceptable, personable. Even that word personable means the mask wearer. A person is a mask wearer, if you look at the etymology of that word. And so we've all become these mask wearers. And then we've disowned those other parts of ourselves that are often referred to as the shadow parts of ourselves. And that's what's reflected out there. So we've got the good guys, the light, and we've got the dark. And so for me, in the same way that the healing of self is about integrating those two, the light and the dark within ourselves to become whole, to become, to have integrity. This is what integrity really means, to be integrated. Then when we do that individually, that out there will reflect that.
Absolutely. In fact, it's funny, when I wrote my first book, which was very much about my experience with a narcissistic partner, I wrote, and I was going through my dark night of the soul, I wrote that we are pressured by society to walk around like clowns with smiley faces painted on our face at all times. This is why a lot of people are alienated. They don't even know who they are anymore because they're trying to deny entire sections of themselves. This is a very limiting beliefs. I don't care how light you think you are. If you're human, you're going to feel all the feelings, right? The entire scale. And that is actually power, because we don't want to be limited to one type of frequency. We want to be able, we're like musical instruments, we're songs. We want to be able to try all of them. If that's what God, that's what Source said. He said, we are beautiful songs. And all he wants for us is to keep the song going, which we do just by being created. We don't have to do anything else. And some of us, you know, are happy songs, and some of us are sad songs. And sometimes a happy song can have sad parts. And it's not only totally okay, but it's actually a welcome experience, because everything is experience. Now, of course, we have had such unbalanced polarity here that we are exposed to a lot more darkness than we would have been otherwise. But that said, it really is about where you focus your energy. So to give you an example that's very current, a lot of people who seem on the surface so concerned with what's happening with the war, the supposed war in Ukraine right now. I asked the 25th about it, and I have not even put this out because I really don't want to do. I don't do intel, you know. Not really interested in this. However, they did tell me it's not real. What's happening is not real. And they told me everything that's behind it, why it's being done, and what actually is going to happen because of it. Really, the bottom line is that the dark doesn't have any new tricks up their sleeve. So they just redo the things. In fact, I was joking with some friends that were like back in the Cold War, like, you know, it's like fashion that every 30, 40 years you recycle the fashion, the style. We're just recycling the Cold War.
It's even older than that. It's, you know, it's really retro, isn't it? Using that analogy, because it's very retro, because this is vintage. The same that was done in the Second World War.
Of course, it's always the same thing, but here's what's happening.
With Germany and Poland and Russia, it was exactly the same thing.
It's always the bad guy. It used to be China, but since we said that China was great example to follow during the so-called disease we've had, we can't just say they're the bad guy all of a sudden. So now we got that. It's the flavor of the month. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because they said that the people who are watching this, whether you love it, whether you actually make money of it, because obviously this is a business, right? You know, the media is making money out of it. They're pumping out fear. It's all good. Governments are, you know, getting what they want out of it. But even the people who believe that they hate it, okay, what they're actually doing is they're still being entertained by it. They said there is no difference between watching the news that's talking about this, you know, this hypothetical situation in Ukraine and watching a war movie. It means that you are still interested in living in that kind of reality. There is no difference. And we know this.
Yeah, and bringing that back to healing, to the healing process, that in the same way, people hold on to their suffering. They hold on to their diseases because they actually identify with those. And again, that's what we're seeing in the macrocosm. So again, it's that fractal nature of everything, isn't it, that we're talking about? And the same thing. Absolutely.
The good news, I was going to tell you some good news, is that
please, we need some.
And more people are bored, because again, we've seen this before, and not bored because we don't care about our fellow humans. It's not that at all. But we've learned now that you can't trust anything, and we're being manipulated and all that. A lot of people are just removed their attention, their focus, their energy from that type of low vibrational situation. And because of that, it's all crumbling. So they actually told me this will be over in no time. It will be over very, very quickly, because it failed. Their big chance was, the so-called disease we've had in the last couple of years, and failed that. Now they're just recycling stuff because a lot of the dark has already left. A lot of the dark has actually gone back to the 25th dimension to rest, because the 25th told me they actually have hurt themselves more than anybody else. And this might be hard for people to accept, because it almost looks like, oh no, they've done some awful things. But cattail. And while they have done that, absolutely undeniably, they also have hurt themselves in the process. Because again, we're all one. You cannot inflict pain without being, without having consequences.
So Clea, if this is all a game that we have created, and whatever we do, the game's going to end anyway, because we're taking it down. Where do things like our spiritual practices fit into this? Where do things like having a sense of having self-discipline, having, you know, trying to live in the best way that we can, having ethics, having morals, all these things, where do these fit in? Or is it like, well, actually, if it's all a game and it's all going to be over anyway, that why do I need to bother? You know, why do I need to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning and do 2 hours of meditation?
Yeah,
you know, I could just get drunk the night before and have a hangover or whatever, you know?
Very fair question. I actually asked them too, because if they say there is no judgment and both dark and light were just playing a game, then why not do, you know, unethical things, just like what you said, right? And what they said is that some of us, so the world has always been split about 50-50. And so some of us, while there is absolute freedom in what you choose to do, all of us in some way have decided to be on one team or the other, or come from one team or the other. Because of that, if you are on a team of the light, sorry for the bad news, is this just your nature? You're going to be doing the discipline thing. You're going to be doing the ethical thing, even though might be easier to do the wrong thing. Because at the end of the day, you've established that you want to be on a team of the light. Now, why would you do that? Because you have friends. You might have incarnated 1,000 times. You made friends on this team, or friends you play with. And therefore, it's almost like agreements, not contracts, because you can change your mind in an instant and do whatever you want. But there are some agreements. We like to hang out with our teammates, right? And that's why most of us, we stay on the team of the light. Now, what is the benefit? Because you asked me, what is the benefit to having these spiritual practices, for example? You know, again, and I think I said this in my video about connecting to source, because this is what basically source told me. The questions don't matter, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, right? The answers don't matter. It's just what you believe in. Okay, whatever your truth is, that's your truth. It doesn't have to be anybody else's truth. However, the questioning matters. So the seeking matters, and it matters because it brings you to what you want to experience. A lot of us, because I've even asked, I said, okay, why are you giving me this information? Why do I need to share this information? They've told me many times that I need to share this information. And this information is very different, as you know, from vast majority of what we hear out there. We hear about ascension. We hear that we have to suffer because suffering increases our ascension, who knows, if we manifest things. None of that is true. All of that information is from within the matrix. It's a game rule that was actually invented by the light to encourage people to behave a certain way. The bottom line is, so why does this matter? Why does it even matter to get this information from the 25th? And they said is because the people who are going to go to New Earth, they are going to need to know this, because our consciousness there is going to be very close to the consciousness of the 25th. In other words, some people, okay, and I didn't know this before I asked, some people apparently need to align with this concept that it's a game. So when you do your spiritual practice, what you've been doing, you've been aligning with this. You and I did not run into each other by chance. Nothing happens by chance. And so what you've been doing with your spiritual practice, even if you hadn't run into me, you have been aligning with the consciousness awareness level you're going to have where you go next. And I have no doubts that you're going to New Earth. I just see you. Okay. Why is that important? Because in New Age spirituality, they tell you that you have to be good. You have to do your spiritual practice. You have to clear your trauma, whatever it is, so that you can manifest and go to New Earth. It's actually the opposite. The 25th, as explained, we have already, everybody on planet Earth has already decided where they're going. Not everybody's going to New Earth, and that's totally fine because it's just another experience. Some people want to experience hanging out with the aliens. Some people want to experience an improved 3D reality. It's all equal. It's an equal choice, okay? But what happens is that since we are going to remember our lives, we're not dying and reincarnating. We're actually just moving, okay? And because we are moving with our current consciousness and awareness, it would be quite traumatic if you moved and you had no concept of what to expect. Like you get to New Earth and somebody's telling you, by the way, this is not real. This is holographic. You might be quite startled by it. And so what is happening right now, they're preparing some of us to move with this alignment. I'll give you another example. People who are going to hang out with the aliens, if they don't believe in aliens and all of a sudden there's an alien picking them up, or they see an alien, they're going to freak out. This was not a good idea. So we have actually prepared ourselves to be okay with the choice that we've chosen.
Yeah. So something that came to me as you were talking there before, you were talking about how things don't matter. This doesn't matter and that doesn't matter. And at the beginning of this conversation, you were talking about how we create matter through low vibration. And I don't think there's any coincidence in our language there that we use these words that it doesn't matter.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
I never thought about it. And that's absolutely,
yeah.
Because you said it, I'm like, ha, yes.
Yeah, it makes, no, I hadn't really thought about it, but I'm listening to you talk. And if something doesn't matter, then it doesn't create matter.
Yeah.
That's what we're actually saying. It's not making any matter. It's not creating any matter if something doesn't matter, you know.
I love it.
So if from these messages that you're bringing through and sharing with us, it kind of really helps us to realize that these things don't matter. Then we stop creating the matter, don't we? You know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I almost forgot that I promised I was going to tell you something that I haven't even released yet. When we were talking about the love and light, and what I was mentioning, how limiting it is, because we're not just love and light, we are everything. Okay, we can modulate any frequency. Okay, in fact, the 25th showed me that showed me before I even connected to source. The 25th showed me sheets of moving energy. They were colorful. They looked like the aurora borealis, but they were red, yellow, orange. And I asked them what that was, and they said it's the matter. It's basically the frequency, the prime material that source has given us to create the multiverse. So the reason I bring this up is because I asked, we hear again a lot about love and light, and we hear that God is love. So I asked God, I says, what are you made of? Are you made of love? And the answer is that, of course, God is not made of love. God is everything. And we too, we are love, but we really are more than love. We are everything. Love is simply, and they've explained this to me, and I'll go much more in detail when I actually read the transcript, because they give me so much information, I have trouble remembering sometimes. But basically, love is simply a name that we give to a particular vibration, but we can play any vibration. That's how powerful we are. So when we focus on just one kind, saying this is good and everything else is bad, we're actually limiting ourselves, doing a disservice to ourselves, because really we're supposed to be able to play, we're an instrument, we're supposed to play the whole scale of possibilities. And that's how God is. God is the entire scale. God is everything. It's not just love. I know that's a favorite thing to say for spiritual people or religious people, that God is love. He's not just love. He's everything.
And that really correlates very closely with my understanding of the practice of Reiki and how Reiki works, as you know, because I've been sharing that with you. And how our chakras are, in a way, they are like the holes on the flute. We talk about being musical instrument, and each chakra, and actually I'm going to go into this in more detail in tomorrow's class, that each chakra is bringing in a different vibration, which is a different note. And we need all those notes, don't we, to play the full symphony, which is our personal music. And it's that music that creates the form. So you're talking about creating matter. My understanding is it's the music that creates the form. And if you look at cymatics, you see that in cymatic experiments, how the sound brings random formless matter into actually into form. So our physical bodies are a 3D manifestation, let's say, of our personal tune. And so if our personal tune gets out of harmony and it's not playing the full tune that, you know, source intends it to play, we become sick. And so and then relating that to the chakras, it means the chakras aren't working properly. So when we use a healing modality like Reiki, for example, which is focusing on the chakras, and there are others, we can work with sounds. This is how sound healing works, and sound healing is extremely powerful. We can work with crystals, which are very dense concentrations in matter of different frequencies of energy. And there's many, we can work with all these different expressions of frequency to open and balance the chakras so that our music starts to play through us again as it's meant to. And then the body comes back to health. We come back to health. And then, of course, the reality that we are experiencing at the moment, that we have created from the 25th, in turn, is cymatic expressions of sound. So this is the sound that's coming from source. As you said at the beginning, source told you to call it music. So the music that's basically emanating constantly from source and replicating through this kind of fractal nature is what's creating cymatically what we experience as our reality.
Well, we have created this, but you're absolutely right. It's the original, the material we're given, not only what we were created from, but material we're given is absolutely that music. Yeah, that frequency. And you know what is funny is that when you don't think about these things, you don't even put two and two together. I know for myself, when I was like, yeah, everything is frequency. And I always knew from a scientific perspective, I'm like, everything is frequency. And as you well know, frequency healing is all the rage, is basically where the direction we're going to in terms of healing. And I never put two and two together, that frequency is sound, frequency is music. And it all makes sense to me now. Sometimes you just need a little push from source to figure stuff out.
Well, you know, for me, really getting to understand this stuff and to be able to start to put this into words and communicate it, really helps me to get an even greater understanding as a healer of how healing happens and, you know, how we can heal ourselves and help others to heal. So I really hope that for people that are listening to this, it lights up some light bulbs, you know. And again, back to my original question, like, how do we apply this gnosis that you're sharing, you know? And again, I think this is one of the answers to it.
Absolutely,
you know?
yeah. And in general, just
really
having perspective about the fact that everything is inside of you, like you were mentioning, everything is a manifestation of what you carry inside. Because think about it this way, there are, you know, the 25th says there are 2 billion people on the planet. The governments say that we're 9 billion people. I tend to believe the 25th. Governments are not known for giving us facts, but basically whatever number of people we are on the planet, think of how many different experiences we have. What is that about? Where does that come from? And it truly comes from what we want to experience, what we expect to see in our reality. That's what gets recreated. Now, again, it's a very dense reality, much denser than it was ever meant to be. So of course, we all run into snags and challenges. I have had several challenges, but I also know that once, after going through my dark night of the soul and doing the work, I have been happy as I've never been happy before. I had no concept of happiness before. Not even when I was a child, I don't think, because already, you know, the programming starts very early. So I am grateful. And this is exactly the type of difference that this knowledge can make in your daily life.
Yeah, that really comes through, Clea, in you know, even talking to you on the, you know, through the screen now, but even in your videos, that joy that you feel really comes through. And, you know, that brings me back to a question that we all ask time to time, is like, what can I do? What difference can I make? And this is a conversation I have so many times, because as you say, at the moment, there's a supposed situation going on in the world that is really demanding people's attention to keep them in fear, and I don't give it any focus or any attention. I was talking to a friend recently, and he starts talking about the war in Ukraine, and I'm like, how do you know there's a war? And he's like, well, you know, it's on the television, everyone's talking about it. I said, yes, but how do you know about it? And and you know, and he, even though he's a very smart guy, he's a relatively enlightened man, but he was really getting quite defensive about the fact that I was not giving this any focus. And I'm like, but me giving any attention to this is not going to help in any way. But me not giving it attention and staying in the highest vibration that I can stay does a lot. That one person can heal the whole world. And I think we've talked about this before, and I know you have in your videos, but this is why they didn't like Jesus Christ. They had to get rid of him, because Jesus Christ was changing the whole of reality, you know. And so, you know, for anyone that's listening that sometimes feels really powerless with all the kind of SHIT that's going on out there, you're not powerless at all. We really are not powerless. Now, I don't know how we're doing for clock time with this video, and there's so many things that I'm sitting here making notes.
I can stay a little bit longer. I do need to put my daughter to bed at some point.
Oh, right.
She's 5, so she needs, but I'm fine. I'm enjoying, as always, speaking with you.
Yeah, no, me too. But I think I said this before, but I'm sure you tell her amazing bedtime stories. You're a great storyteller.
Thank you.
For me, when I listen to your videos, and this doesn't mean in any way that I don't take them seriously when I say this, but it's like listening to a story. You know, it's like a great soap opera, and I can't wait for the next installment.
This is the greatest soap opera, and they've actually called it that. And everybody's watching it. Yeah, in the multiverse.
Now, this isn't a question. I've got 2 things that I really want to talk to you about today, but very, very quickly, that reminds me. When's your book coming out?
I don't have a book yet, but if we're still here past the summer, then I will consider writing another book.
Because you're writing all these transcripts down, don't you? And it reminds me a little bit of that amazing work that Neil Donald Walsh did, his conversations with God, in a similar way. You know, it has a similar kind of feel to it, you know.
Oh, thank you. It's funny because he came to mind. I have conversations with God here. I've read it.
Yeah.
It came to mind. I was like, it's funny. I used to think, how lucky these people that can do this. How wonderful is that? You never know what's going to happen to you. You could wake up tomorrow and have a completely mystical experience. That's the beauty of it. Once you align with that, again, it's a matter of alignment. Once you align with that, you remove the obstacles to it.
Well, you aligned with it by asking that question all those years ago. As soon as you ask a question, it sets a process in motion that needs answering, doesn't it? So
and I've
that's
been
exactly
asking
right.
these questions obsessively
Yeah.
since I decided to open up my gifts. I was very upset that I had shut them down, and I'm like, oh my goodness, if I lost them. And of course, you can never lose anything. And because I have been wanting to open them up again, this is why basically I was ready, and this is what happened.
Yeah, our stories are very parallel there, Clea. I won't get into it now, but in terms of like our life paths, very parallel. But there's two things that I wrote down, so I'm going to kind of like stubbornly stick to my notes here. There's two things that I wrote down before we jumped on the call today that I wanted to bring into the conversation, which is money and time. Because for me, these are the two systems, let's say, that we have created to enslave ourselves. And they've, in a way, maybe at some point they served a positive function, but they've become so distorted now that they really are our shackles, you know? So I just wondered if you had anything to talk about with money and time from the 25th.
So money and time are a little bit different, because money was an idea, just like a million other ideas are available out there. And both the light team and the dark team come up with ideas. That's the whole point. And then each one of us gets to decide whether we want to accept this idea, discard this idea, or maybe accept it for a little while and then discard it. Okay. So like religion, a lot of people have been born into religion, or like I was religious as a child for the simple reason I was born and raised in Italy. So by default, it's in the culture. But then at some point I decided that wasn't for me. And so money was just an idea. It was introduced by the dark, but it was introduced as all the other ideas they've introduced. Not everybody has to sign up and believe it. However, that's the idea that unbalanced the polarity. It became so attractive to so many that it started enslaving people. So what I mean by that is that the main thing that the 25th keeps repeating is that you are free. We are free. We can change our mind about anything at any time. However, what's happened with money is that you might say, okay, well, I don't want to play with that idea. I don't believe in money. Well, guess what? You already made a choice within the money system that you're now going to be poor. So it's taken away our free will in some ways. And because of that, that is the number one thing that unbalanced this reality. Now, time is different in the sense that time was a rule, again, an idea that was created to run this 3D reality, because time doesn't exist in other places. But it was a construct, right? But time can be different for everybody. So for example, you and I can experience time completely different. So it is not an idea that necessarily applies equally to everybody, okay? We've not been able to, we have tried to cut time down into sections, just like we do with money. This is $1, $2, $3. This is 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, or months, or whatever it is. But it doesn't quite work that way. In fact, everyone, I think, can relate to this. You have days that feel like an hour. It's like, where did the day go? And then you have days that are never ending. I'm like, oh my goodness, is it still 11 a.m.? What happened? I thought I'd been up all day already. So time is much more fluid because it's not necessarily an idea that was set up for the benefit on one side. It's something that we as essence, as incarnated essence here, have wanted so that we can control the planet, right? So this is not something that was done against us, and nothing is done against us. Again, we get to choose, but this is something that we decided to adopt as an idea to manage the planet. Well,
so what I was told by Source about time is that time is really created as a consequence of the I don't want to use the word time, but there isn't another word I can think to use right now. The time between the thought and the manifestation. So as we become denser,
Mhm.
as we come down into denser realities, that becomes longer, that distance in space-time between the thought that we have and the manifestation. Now, when we're up in those higher dimensions, then, and it's not that high actually, it's only fifth and above, then we think, and then the manifestation is immediate. And again, this is what Jesus Christ was teaching to us, that we can do that. That's what was shown that time was. And we touched upon the subject of plant medicines earlier. And that was something that came through to me on a plant medicine journey. And as an illustration during that journey, I was shown how time stops. And it was one of the scariest experiences of my life. It really was, Claire. I got put into a time loop where something was just repeating and repeating and repeating, like, and then the shaman had to come and actually help me out of that and take me out of that. Apparently that's something that can be quite common. That was an ayahuasca experience. So yeah, but so during that same ayahuasca experience, that's how time was explained to me. I know for myself, I mean, I stopped wearing a watch many years ago, and then I moved over to Thailand about 9 years ago. One of the reasons I moved here was it was about as out of the matrix as I could get. I mean, I'm still in the matrix, but I mean, I was living in England. It was becoming absolutely unbearable. So I came here. So I found it fairly easy to detach from clock time, which is why I'm late for Zoom calls and things like that.
Totally perfect.
But yeah, the money one is a challenge. Now, I have been very consciously recently been detaching myself as much as possible from money slavery. But yeah, as you say, it's virtually impossible at the moment to do that. Yeah.
Believe it or not, there are people who are not wanting to go to New Earth, essences that have decided not to go to New Earth because they want to live with money. Because money is a very powerful concept. That's why it has taken hold so strongly in our imagination. And we did all enjoy it in the beginning. We all did. Of course, then it's become very dark and, you know, manipulative. But in the beginning, we were enjoying it. That's why it's gotten such a strong hold, because basically all of us said, okay, this sounds like a great idea. Even the dark, the 25th has told me that even the dark did not realize how much it would unbalance reality, polarity. It was actually a mishap. It was a mistake that has taken us to the point where we now have to take down the entire planet because we can't even rebalance it anymore, and nobody's having fun anymore.
It's so addictive, isn't it? Money is, you know. I mean, I have many clients that I work with that have addictions to gambling, for example, you know, to just get their money. But so I guess for me, that's something that I'd like to take from this conversation and pass on, so that, you know, the topic of the conversation was, okay, what can we, from the messages that you're bringing through, and the gnosis that you're bringing through, how do we apply that right now to our everyday lives? So this for me would be another one, would be to detach as much as you possibly can from time and money, because they are our enslavement.
I will tell you something though, this was interesting. So one of the things I asked Source, I've been asked to, so yes, I've detached a lot from 3D in general, especially since I started connected to the 25th, to the point that it's unusual for me, because again, I'm an entrepreneur. For me, 3D is very simple in that sense. You know, the money part has not been a super challenge for me. I'm not saying that I've been swimming in it, but you know, there are people who have suffered a lot more. So I can say I'm fortunate in that sense.
Yeah.
But I have detached myself a lot from anything 3D since at least last August, consciously. And of course, everything happens for a reason. The money, when I connected with Source, I was asked last week, so before I had this experience, to help somebody finish a real estate deal. And I honestly, at this point, my head has been elsewhere. So normally I would have said no. And I've turned down different deals for this reason. And I asked Source, I said, so what shall I do? Should I be working on this? And Source said, help him finish his song. And that's when I realized that it's not about the money many times. Depending on where your focus is, you're just helping someone, and then just abundance flows from it. So I will make money out of this, but I'm not doing it for money, which is not to say I cannot use the money. I'm sure I can use it, but that's not my main concern in this equation. Is the fact that we are all notes in each other's song. And so I'm helping him do what he needs to do for his own experience. I do want to comment on something you said about time. So they did show to me very similar to what you said. I love this because I know you're connected, and I always enjoy speaking with you and comparing experiences. This is lovely, really. For me, it's a treat. They have told me what happens is that, like you said, time is space between our intention and manifestation, because elsewhere it's instant manifestations. There is no space in between, and therefore there's no time. That's why we talk about the space-time continuum. They're the same thing. But the reason we have wanted to slow down our manifestation was to isolate, to be able to see things. And therefore, when you manifest immediately, basically instantly, you don't have time to see how things form. That's why we created time, because now we can isolate things, and time, this amount of time that it takes to manifest something or to live through something that you manifested. Because say that I do want to look at negative energy or of some kind. So say a disease. One thing is you manifest it quickly and then you're like, okay, I don't like it, gone. And one thing is to say that you're going to be living with this disease for a month, a year, years, maybe a decade. This is where pain comes from. It's the fact that this lasts so long. So again, this time vector, if we want to call it that, makes a huge difference in our experience here. And this is why it's one of the things we're not going to keep, on your earth. There will be no time.
There are many teachers out there, and I include myself amongst these, that teach law of attraction. And in a way, teaching law of attraction, understanding law of attraction, is like understanding the rules of the board game that we're playing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And all those spiritual laws like karma and law of attraction, the law of giving, the law of gratitude, all these kind of laws that we teach as supposedly spiritual laws are actually like the rules of the board game that we're playing.
Exactly. And you know it because the fact is, I'm actually going to ask more about the law of attraction, because here's what happens in real life. And you know this, I'm sure it's happened to you. It happens to everybody. There are times that you want something and you really, really want it. And of course, you don't say I want it. There are several techniques for manifesting, etc. But if your essence does not want that experience, doesn't matter how much you think intellectually that you want something, it's just not going to happen. And the corollary to that is the opposite, that you're going to manifest things that you don't want because your essence actually wants it. And diseases are a case in point. I don't think anybody will go out and say, I would like to have cancer. I'll take a little bit of cancer and, and see how that feels. But you know what? I've done that. I have manifested cancer because my essence wanted. Now, didn't want the experience because, like in New Age spirituality, they tell you because it made me a better person, because I'm ascending, because my soul learned so much. Our souls, our essences don't have to learn. We're all ascended masters. We don't have to learn. However, the cancer cleared out. I actually asked about this. The cancer did several things for me. One, it allowed me to believe that I'm in the game, right? Because these physical manifestations allow you to believe this is real. And secondly, it cleared out very quickly a lot of negative energy from my life, including people that left or that I left while I had cancer. So there is something that my essence wanted for me, which was to get to this point today where I am connected. And for me to connect, I had to clear out everything, all my limiting beliefs. Cancer was one of the reasons I went through my dark night of the soul. So there was a purpose. It wasn't for my essence to grow. My essence doesn't need to grow. It was for me to get to the point where in 3D, I am able to do this. So this is to say, yeah, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Sorry, Claire. That totally correlates with an understanding that I came to some time ago in my healing practice, is that what causes us suffering and therefore disease is our disconnection from source. And so it's the same thing. So when you have disease, like you're saying, the cancer that you experienced really brought you to source. And it manifested in your body through your disconnect with source, or at least your perceived disconnect. You believe, you know, that's what it sounds like to me.
It was denying. I was denying myself. I was lying to myself. I was telling myself I had to sacrifice. And I don't know if it sounds familiar. This concept is from religion and also from New Age spirituality, that we have to go through a bad experience for us to be better people. I was telling myself all these things. So I suffered and tolerated things that are intolerable and I should have not tolerated, but I thought I was being a good person. Do you see all these fake made up beliefs to keep us manipulated in slavery? And my essence said, this is not what you came here to do. So you need to snap out of this so we can do some work. And that's exactly what happened. And it's okay. I regret nothing. I'm grateful. This is how I've learned. I've been lucky compared to many people, because obviously I'm here to tell the story. There are people that passed from cancer. But again, it's just a manifestation of what your essence wants to do. It's not it's never a punishment of any type.
And that's the ultimate healing, isn't it? Is when you can actually look back with gratitude on the experience that you went through. That's when you've truly, truly healed, I would say. Yeah.
As I said, I am so happy. I have forgiven my ex-husband. I've forgiven other people. I've forgiven everybody for the simple reason that it's exactly what we're talking about when we were talking about the war. You continue recreating a reality by giving it your attention. I have removed my attention from all of that. It's not real anymore. It's just a story. You know, it's a parallel reality is what it is, because there is no time. So your past, or what we consider our past, it's a parallel reality. The second you focus on it, it's real. The second you move your focus elsewhere, it dissipates. It's not real anymore. It's almost like, I've heard a great analogy for this. It's almost like you have a tape, you know, if we go old style, you could have a Blu-ray disc. Let's go a little bit closer in technology. In your disc player, say you have a movie in there, until you play that movie, you're not in the movie, but the second you play and it shows you a scene, you're in that scene. So if you never play that movie doesn't exist for you. It's like it was never made. It's not even there. This is the power of our focus. And the 25th talks about this all the time under so many guises. We were just talking about it a little bit earlier when we were talking about the fact that a lot of these plant medicines, they're codes. Basically, they take you, what they have is the power to take you in an instant to a parallel reality. The question is, which parallel reality? If you are working on something that is very dark, you will not like what you experience, because basically it's going to manifest, it's going to make it very clear what you have going on behind the scenes at all times. But if you've been working on something light, you're going to experience something very fun, very light. But that's because that's what your essence has been focusing on. And now you get to see it in your 3D reality. That's all it is. It's a matter of focus. Our focus is the most powerful thing. So when you say, you know, don't let yourself make, believe that you are helpless. You're absolutely not helpless. Based on what you focus on, this is what you will give power to. And I know it's hard to do in 3D, to move away from, for example, scarcity. If you're having problems at work, problems putting food on your table, I realize it's hard, but just because you're focusing on that doesn't mean you have to perpetuate it. You don't have to put up resistance. So it's what I was telling you, and I will leave it at this because I know we're running. So I want to make sure if you have a last question that we get that in. What I was saying earlier is that I have been going through a lot of difficult things from a 3D perspective with an association I'm involved with that normally would have caused a lot of stress. And I can tell you, I have dealt with all of them. I'm still dealing with them, and it doesn't even faze me. Sometimes I look at myself, I'm like, what happened? I don't care about anything anymore. It's not true that I don't care about anything. I truly just give the proper weight to things these days. And you can still deal with something in the 3D without giving it outsized weight, because that's when it takes you over. I guess that's the message that I wanted to get across.
I'm not going to ask any more questions because I know how it goes with us, and then we'll be here another hour.
We'll have to do this again, that's all.
Exactly. And whilst time doesn't exist, your daughter's ready for her bedtime.
She is.
Story
tomorrow, so that's okay.
Yeah. So no, I'm not going to ask anything else. Is there anything more that you'd like to add before we?
You know what? Let's do this experiment. I've only done this once before and it worked out. Let me just ask them if they want to say anything. So give me a second. Yeah. So they're just saying that, yeah, we're almost done. So we have done great. We have nothing to feel guilty about. We have nothing to recriminate about. All of us have been instrumental in taking this down, and we're all moving forward. We're going to be very happy with what we've done. So there is lots of reasons to rejoice.
That sounds good. That sounds like a great message to leave this with.
Me. They just said, yeah, just let them know that everything is good and we're very happy. I'm like, okay.
Good. Well, I think let's quit while we're ahead then. That's a lovely message to leave with. I'm not going to do any plugs for your channel, my channel, and what we're offering. That's all going to be in the comments below. But yeah, that was great as ever, Clea.
I had a lot of fun, Simon. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you so much.